Michael had been working at Lumiere for just 3 weeks, and he still couldn't believe his luck. Landing a job at one of Los Angeles's most exclusive restaurants was no small feat, especially for someone with limited fine dining experience. Every night he walked through the heavy mahogany doors and took in the crystal chandeliers, the soft piano music, and the gentle murmur of the city's elite enjoying their $400 dinners. "Remember, eyes sharp tonight," said Tony, the head waiter, who had taken Michael under his wing. "I heard some big names might be stopping by." Michael nodded eagerly. In his short time at Lumiere, he'd already served 2 movie producers, a famous singer and a tech billionaire. The trick, Tony had taught him, was to treat them with respect but not fawning attention. The ultra-wealthy came to Lumiere because the staff knew how to be invisible until needed. What Michael didn't know, what almost no one knew, was that ownership of the restaurant had changed hands 6 months earlier. The previous owner, a French chef who had built Lumiere's reputation over 15 years, had received an offer he couldn't refuse. The buyer had insisted on keeping the transaction quiet, not wanting to disrupt the restaurant's operations or change its identity. That buyer was Keanu Reeves. The actor had fallen in love with Lumiere during a dinner with friends the previous year. He appreciated not just the exceptional food but the atmosphere, warm yet professional, exclusive yet unpretentious. When he heard the owner was considering retirement, Keanu saw an opportunity, not as a vanity purchase but as a meaningful investment in something he believed in. "I don't want anyone to know," Keanu had told his lawyer when finalizing the paperwork. "I'm not looking to be the celebrity owner who shows up for photo ops. I just want to preserve what makes this place special." Only the general manager, the head chef, and 2 longtime employees knew the truth. To everyone else, including new hires like Michael, Lumiere was still owned by a restaurant group based in New York. This arrangement suited Keanu perfectly. It allowed him to visit occasionally, sitting at a corner table to enjoy the food and observe the operation without causing a stir. On this particular Friday evening, the restaurant hummed with activity. A famous director was hosting a dinner party in the private room. 2 tech executives were negotiating a deal over wine at a window table. A renowned food critic was discreetly taking notes while pretending to text on her phone. In the kitchen, the chef was calling out orders with military precision, while line cooks responded with sharp, "Yes, chef," acknowledgments. Servers glided between tables, appearing exactly when needed and vanishing when not. "Table 7 needs another round," called the bartender, expertly mixing a signature cocktail with house-infused spirits. Michael was polishing glasses behind the bar when Tony nudged him. "Got a new guest at 23, Tony said, referring to a small corner table partly hidden by a decorative screen. "Can you handle it?" "I've got my hands full with the party of 8 that just arrived." "Of course," Michael replied, straightening his black tie and smoothing his jacket. This was his chance to prove himself. Maybe if he provided excellent service, the managers would let him take more high-profile tables in the future. He approached table 23 with practiced steps, neither rushing nor dawdling. The man sitting there had his back to the room and was studying the menu intently. Michael could see only that he had shoulder-length dark hair and wore what appeared to be a simple black t-shirt, unusual attire for Lumiere, where most male guests wore at least a sports coat, if not a full suit. "Good evening, sir," Michael said in the precise, warm tone he'd been practicing. "Welcome to Lumiere. May I tell you about our specials this evening?" The man looked up, and Michael felt a jolt of recognition. The face was instantly familiar. Keanu Reeves. Michael had seen all his films, from Speed to The Matrix to the John Wick series. Known for his kindness as much as his acting, Keanu was something of a legend in Hollywood circles. But despite this recognition, Michael felt a twinge of disapproval. The actor was dressed far too casually for Lumiere. Jeans, a simple black t-shirt, and a well-worn leather jacket hung on the back of his chair. No tie, no dress shirt, not even a collared shirt. This would never have been allowed for regular guests, but celebrities often received special treatment. "Thank you," Keanu replied with a genuine smile. "I'd love to hear about the specials." Michael described the chef's creations for the evening: a truffle risotto with gold leaf, a Japanese A5 Wagyu with fermented black garlic, and a wild-caught sea bass with sauce made from champagne and caviar. As he spoke, he noticed Keanu listening, attentively, nodding occasionally. "Everything sounds wonderful," Keanu said when Michael finished. "I'm curious about the risotto, but I have a slight dairy intolerance. Could the kitchen possibly make it with olive oil instead of butter, and perhaps without the cheese?" Michael's smile faltered slightly. Such substitutions were generally discouraged. At Lumiere, where the chef viewed each dish as a carefully balanced creation, and making such requests while dressed so casually seemed presumptuous, even for a celebrity. "I'm afraid the risotto is one of our signature dishes, prepared in the traditional manner," Michael replied, his tone cooling slightly. "The chef is quite particular about maintaining the integrity of his creations. Perhaps something from our vegan menu might better suit your preferences." The last word carried just a hint of condescension. A few nearby diners, who had recognized Keanu, glanced over with surprise at Michael's tone. Keanu didn't seem offended. "I understand completely," he said with the same warm smile. "The chef's vision is important. Could you tell me more about the vegan options then?" Michael described the plant-based menu with noticeably less enthusiasm, rushing through the descriptions. When Keanu asked thoughtful questions about the preparation of one dish, Michael's patience began to wear thin. "Sir, these are sophisticated, culinary creations, not simple vegetable plates," he said with a slight edge to his voice. "Our chef uses techniques that would be difficult to explain to someone without a background in fine dining. Perhaps another restaurant might better suit your taste and budget." A woman at the next table nearly choked on her wine. Her dining companion's eyes widened in disbelief. Even the busboy who was refilling water glasses paused mid-pour. Keanu simply nodded, still unfazed. "I see. Well, I'm still interested in trying the sea bass if that would be easier for the kitchen." Michael wrote down the order with a tight smile and turned to walk away when he felt a hand on his arm. It was Lisa, the general manager, who had approached the table without him noticing. "Michael, could I speak with you for a moment?" she asked, her voice pleasant but her eyes sending a clear warning signal. To Keanu, she said, "Mr. Reeves, it's wonderful to see you again. Please accept my apologies for the confusion. I'll make sure the kitchen knows about your preferences for the risotto." Michael followed Lisa a short distance away, his mind racing. Again? Lisa knew Keanu Reeves personally, and she was overriding the kitchen's policy on substitutions? "Michael," Lisa said quietly when they were out of earshot. "Do you know who that is?" "Keanu Reeves, the actor," Michael replied, confused by the question. Lisa took a deep breath. "Yes, but he's also the owner of Lumiere. He bought the restaurant 6 months ago." The color drained from Michael's face as the implications of his behavior came crashing down on him. He had just been condescending to his actual boss, a man who could fire him with a single word. The evening had started like any other at Lumiere. The soft glow of chandeliers cast elegant shadows across white tablecloths. The gentle clink of fine china and crystal created a sophisticated soundtrack that blended with quiet conversation and occasional laughter. Outside, a line of luxury cars, Bentleys, Maseratis, and high-end Teslas, pulled up to the valet stand one after another. Keanu had arrived without fanfare. He'd parked his own motorcycle 2 blocks away and walked the rest of the distance, enjoying the cool Los Angeles evening. He didn't come to Lumiere to be seen. In fact, quite the opposite. He came to observe, to enjoy good food, and to quietly take pride in this beautiful space that was now, unknown to most, his own. "Good evening, sir," the hostess had greeted him. Her eyes widened slightly with recognition, but her professional demeanor never wavered. "Will you be dining alone tonight?" "Yes, thank you," Keanu replied with a warm smile. "Something quiet would be nice if possible." The hostess nodded knowingly. "I have just the spot for you, Mr. Reeves." She led him through the main dining area, past tables of business executives and celebrities, to a small alcove partially screened by an ornate divider. The table offered a perfect view of the entire restaurant while remaining somewhat secluded. "Thomas will be your server tonight," she said, pulling out his chair. "He's been with us for 15 years. Would you prefer a wine menu to start?" Just water for now, thank you, Keanu said, settling into his seat. But Thomas was nowhere to be seen when a young man approached the table instead. He looked to be in his mid-20s with a pressed black suit and a slightly nervous energy that suggested he was new. Keanu noticed the small name tag on his jacket, Michael. After their initial interaction and Michael's less than welcoming attitude about the menu modifications, Keanu found himself more amused than offended. He had worked plenty of service jobs before making it as an actor. He understood the pressure, the long hours on your feet, the sometimes difficult customers. Michael was clearly trying to protect the restaurant's standards. He just didn't realize who he was talking to. What bothered Keanu wasn't the lack of deference. He actually preferred being treated like any other customer, but rather the assumption that someone who didn't fit a certain appearance couldn't possibly understand or appreciate fine dining. It was the kind of judgment he'd faced throughout his own career, where people underestimated him because he didn't fit their idea of what a serious actor should be. When the general manager, Lisa, appeared at their table, Keanu could tell immediately from Michael's expression that the waiter had no idea about Keanu's connection to the restaurant. Lisa had been one of the first people Keanu had told about his purchase. He trusted her completely to maintain the restaurant's excellence while keeping his ownership private. As Lisa pulled Michael aside, Keanu watched the young man's face transform from confusion to shock to pure horror. He saw Michael's shoulders slump and could almost feel the wave of panic washing over him. For a moment he thought the young waiter might actually faint. Lisa returned to the table alone. Mr. Reeves, I can't apologize enough for the misunderstanding. I've asked Thomas to take over your table for the remainder of your meal. Keanu shook his head. That won't be necessary, Lisa. I'd like Michael to continue serving my table. Lisa looked surprised. Are you sure? It wouldn't be any trouble to... I'm sure, Keanu said firmly but kindly. Everyone deserves a second chance. Lisa nodded, understanding. Of course, I'll send him right back, and the chef is already preparing the risotto exactly to your specifications. After she left, Keanu took a sip of water and gazed around his restaurant. He loved watching the carefully choreographed dance of the staff, servers moving with purpose, sommeliers describing wines with passion, busboys appearing and disappearing almost like magic. It reminded him of a film set, where every person had their role to play in creating something beautiful. When Michael returned to the table, he looked like a man walking to his own execution. His face was pale, his hands trembled slightly as he set down a basket of fresh bread, and he couldn't quite meet Keanu's eyes. Mr. Reeves, he began, his voice barely above a whisper. I can't begin to express how deeply sorry I am for my behavior. I had no idea. I mean, not that it would be acceptable regardless, but... He trailed off, clearly at a loss for words. Keanu gestured to the chair across from him. Would you sit down for a moment, Michael? Michael looked around nervously. Sir, I'm not allowed to sit with guests during service. I think we can make an exception, Keanu said with a small smile. Just for a minute. Hesitantly, Michael lowered himself into the chair, perching on the edge as if ready to spring up at any moment. How long have you been at Lumiere? Keanu asked. 3 weeks, sir, Michael replied, his voice still shaky. And before that? I was at the Orchid for a year, and before that, I worked at several casual dining places while I was in school. Nothing as prestigious as this. He gestured around the elegant dining room. Keanu nodded thoughtfully. I worked as a busboy when I was younger, and as a pasta maker at an Italian restaurant. I was terrible at it, he added with a self-deprecating laugh. Couldn't get the dough consistency right. Michael looked surprised, both at the revelation and at the conversational tone. I didn't know that, sir. Most people don't. Just like most people don't know I own this restaurant, Keanu said, leaning forward slightly. I keep it quiet because I want Lumiere to be about the food, the atmosphere, the experience. Not about me. He paused, taking another sip of water before continuing. Do you know why I bought this place, Michael? Michael shook his head. Because when I came here as a customer, I felt welcome. The staff treated me like a person, not a celebrity. The Food was incredible, yes, but it was the humanity of the place that really got to me. Keanu's eyes moved around the room as he spoke, taking in all the details. Every guest who walks through that door deserves to feel that same way, regardless of what they're wearing or how much they know about fine dining. Michael's face flushed with shame. I understand, sir, and I promise it won't happen again. If you're willing to give me another chance, I'm not firing you, Michael. Keanu interrupted gently. Michael blinked in surprise. You're not? No. But I am asking you to remember something important, Keanu said. You never know someone's story just by looking at them. That woman over there? He nodded toward an elderly lady dining alone, dressed simply but elegantly. She's a Holocaust survivor who went on to become one of the country's leading civil rights attorneys. And that guy in the corner wearing the t-shirt under his blazer? He just donated $20 million to children's cancer research. These were people Keanu had met during previous visits, guests whose stories had touched him. Michael looked at them with new eyes, clearly seeing them differently now. I'm not saying you should treat them well because of those accomplishments, Keanu continued. I'm saying you should treat everyone with the same respect because you don't know who they are or what their journey has been. Michael nodded, his expression transforming from fear to genuine understanding. Thank you, Mr. Reeves. Not just for not firing me, but for the lesson. I won't forget it. Keanu smiled. Good. Now, I think you have other tables to attend to, and I'm looking forward to trying that risotto. Michael stood up, straightening his jacket with newfound purpose. It will be the best risotto you've ever had, sir. I'll make sure of it personally. As Michael walked away, Keanu noticed a subtle change in the young man's posture. Shoulders back, head higher, steps more deliberate. It wasn't subservience born from fear of losing his job, but rather the confidence of someone who had learned something valuable about himself and the world. Keanu smiled to himself and opened the wine menu. He hadn't planned on drinking tonight, but now he felt like celebrating. After all, owning a restaurant wasn't just about serving great food. It was about creating a space where people could grow, connect, and perhaps occasionally learn important life lessons over a perfect risotto. The dining room at Lumiere buzzed with the gentle hum of conversation and the soft clink of silverware against fine china. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the lights of Los Angeles twinkled like earthbound stars. At a nearby table, a famous director was celebrating his latest film's success. 2 tables over, a tech billionaire was quietly discussing his next venture with potential investors. None of this registered with Michael as he retreated to the kitchen, his mind still reeling from the revelation that Keanu Reeves, was not just a customer but the owner of Lumiere, and he, Michael, had just treated him with thinly veiled contempt. You look like you've seen a ghost, said Priya, one of the other servers, as she expertly arranged appetizers on her tray. Worse, Michael mumbled. I just insulted the owner of the restaurant to his face. Priya nearly dropped her tray. What? Mr. Bellamy was here? I thought he was in New York. Not Bellamy, Michael said, lowering his voice. Keanu Reeves. Apparently he bought the place months ago. Priya's eyes widened. You're joking. I wish I was. I basically told him he didn't belong here because of how he was dressed. Suggested he might want to find a restaurant more suited to his budget and taste. The words sounded even worse when he repeated them. Oh my God, Priya whispered, glancing toward the dining room. Are you fired? That's the strangest part. He didn't fire me. He actually asked me to keep serving his table. Before Priya could respond, Chef Andre's voice cut through their conversation. Table 23's risotto, he called out, sliding a beautifully plated dish onto the pass. Made with olive oil instead of butter, no cheese. Who ordered this abomination? Michael approached the kitchen counter tentatively. It's for Mr. Reeves, chef. Who? Chef Andre asked, his French accent becoming more pronounced as it always did when he was irritated. Lisa, the general manager, appeared beside them. Andre, remember our conversation 6 months ago about the new owner who wanted to remain anonymous? The chef's expression changed instantly from annoyance to understanding. Ah, oui. The actor. This is for him? When Lisa nodded, he immediately inspected the plate with renewed intensity. It needs something. Jean-Paul, bring me the truffle, the best one, and the gold leaf. Michael watched in amazement as the chef who had once reduced a server to tears for requesting a well-done steak, now personally garnished the modified risotto with shaved black truffle and delicate flakes of edible gold leaf. You will take this to him immediately, Chef Andre instructed Michael, and tell him I can prepare something special for his next visit if he lets me know in advance. Michael carefully lifted the plate, now a work of art despite the modifications. As he walked back toward the dining room, Lisa pulled him aside. Michael, I don't know what Mr. Reeves said to you, but you've been given a rare second chance. Don't waste it. I won't, he promised, his voice steadier than he felt. When he returned to table 23, Keanu was typing something on his phone. He looked up as Michael approached and smiled warmly, as if their earlier interaction had never happened. Chef, Andre prepared this specially for you, Michael said, placing the risotto down with a newfound reverence. He added fresh black truffle and said he'd be happy to create custom dishes for your dietary preferences in the future. That's very kind of him, Keanu said, studying the beautiful plate. Please thank him for me. Michael nodded, standing a little straighter. Can I get you anything else at the moment, sir? Actually, yes, Keanu said. I'd love to hear your honest opinion about the restaurant, not as an employee, but as someone who works here every day. What's your favorite dish? What do you think we could improve? The question caught Michael off guard. My opinion? Yes, Keanu said simply. I value perspective. Michael hesitated, then decided that honesty was his only path forward after his earlier mistake. Well, I haven't actually tried most of the menu. Staff aren't allowed to eat the regular dishes. Really? Keanu looked surprised. That seems counterproductive. How can you recommend dishes you've never tasted? We get detailed descriptions from Chef Andre during pre-shift meetings, and we can smell everything as it comes through the kitchen, but Michael trailed off, realizing how strange it sounded when put into words. What about staff meals? What does the kitchen prepare for you? Usually whatever's about to expire, Michael admitted. Yesterday was pasta with leftover vegetable scraps. Keanu frowned slightly, making a mental note. I see. And if you could change anything else about Lumiere, what would it be? Michael thought carefully before answering. This felt like a test, but also like a genuine opportunity. Honestly, I think we could be more accommodating of dietary restrictions, not just for VIPs, he added quickly, but for everyone. We turn away a lot of potential customers because Chef Andre won't modify his creations. He waited for Keanu to look offended at the criticism, but instead the actor nodded thoughtfully. What else? Keanu prompted. Finding unexpected confidence, Michael continued. The dress code is a bit outdated. We've had to turn away people in perfectly nice clothes just because the men weren't wearing jackets. Last week, this young tech entrepreneur came in, probably worth billions, but we made him borrow a house jacket because he was wearing a turtleneck instead of a collared shirt. Keanu smiled at this, glancing down at his own simple attire. I imagine that doesn't make for a welcoming first impression. Exactly, Michael agreed, warming to the conversation. And one more thing. We waste a lot of food. Anything that doesn't look absolutely perfect gets thrown out even if it tastes fine. There's a homeless shelter 3 blocks from here, but we've never even considered donating. As he spoke, Michael realized he was saying things he'd only thought privately, never intending to voice them aloud. Yet Keanu was listening with genuine interest, occasionally nodding or asking follow-up questions. At a nearby table, an older couple was watching their interaction with poorly disguised curiosity. The woman leaned toward her husband and whispered something, and they both smiled. Michael recognized them as regulars, the Harringtons, who came every Friday and always ordered the same thing. Oysters to start, Dover sole for her, ribeye for him, and chocolate soufflé to share. Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. Harrington. Michael greeted them with a nod. Hello, dear, Mrs. Harrington replied warmly. We couldn't help noticing you're having quite the conversation with Mr. Reeves. Are you an aspiring actor as well? Michael felt his cheeks flush. No, ma'am, just a waiter trying to do my job. And learning a few life lessons along the way. Keanu added with a kind smile. Michael has been giving me some valuable insights about the restaurant. Mr. Harrington looked surprised. Oh, are you thinking of investing in the place? There was a brief moment where Michael caught Keanu's eye, a silent question passing between them. Keanu gave an almost imperceptible shake of his head. Just a passionate diner, Keanu replied smoothly. I believe the best restaurants are always evolving. Well, we've been coming here for 15 years, Mrs. Harrington said proudly. And while we love the traditions, we also love to see positive changes. That new sommelier, for instance, the young woman from Argentina, she's introduced us to wines we never would have tried otherwise. As the conversation continued, Michael noticed something remarkable happening. The usual invisible barrier between tables, that unspoken agreement among fine diners to pretend they're alone in the room, was dissolving. The Harringtons were chatting with Keanu as if they were old friends. A woman at another nearby table politely joined in when the topic turned to travel, offering her recommendations for restaurants in Tokyo. Michael stepped back slightly, allowing the natural flow of conversation while remaining attentive to needs for water refills or additional service. He watched as Keanu somehow managed to make everyone feel included, without ever mentioning his celebrity status or his ownership of the restaurant. He simply listened to people, asked thoughtful questions, and shared his own experiences with genuine enthusiasm. At one point, Keanu caught Michael's eye and gave him a subtle nod of approval. Michael felt an unexpected surge of pride. Maybe he hadn't ruined everything after all. Maybe, just maybe, this disastrous evening would turn into something valuable. You know what I think we need? Keanu said suddenly, addressing everyone within earshot. Dessert. Michael, could you bring dessert menus for everyone, my treat? As Michael hurried to fulfill the request, he overheard Mrs. Harrington say, Such a lovely young man. Hollywood could use more gentlemen like him. Michael couldn't help but smile. If she only knew the full story, how he had nearly lost his job by insulting the very person who was now buying dessert for half the dining room. It was a plot twist worthy of a Keanu Reeves movie. And somehow, against all odds, it seemed to be heading toward a happy ending. The next morning, Michael arrived at Lumiere 2 hours before his shift was scheduled to begin. After the events of the previous evening, he couldn't stop thinking about his interaction with Keanu Reeves. He had tossed and turned all night, replaying their conversation in his mind and wondering what would happen next. Would Keanu change? His mind about keeping him employed? Would the other staff treat him differently once word got out about his massive blunder? The restaurant was quiet at this hour, with only the cleaning crew finishing up and the kitchen staff beginning their preparations for the day. Michael nodded to Pavel, the Ukrainian doorman who had worked at Lumiere for over a decade. You're early, Pavel remarked, raising an eyebrow. Everything okay? Just wanted to get a head start, Michael replied vaguely. He made his way to the staff locker room and changed into his uniform, straightening his tie with extra care. As he was about to head out to help with lunch preparations, he heard Lisa, the general manager, calling his name. Michael, could I see you in my office, please? His stomach dropped. This was it. Despite what Keanu had said yesterday, he was about to be fired. Maybe the actor had reconsidered after a night's sleep, or perhaps the other owners had overruled him. Lisa's office was small but elegant, with framed restaurant reviews and awards covering one wall. She gestured for him to take a seat. I've been speaking with Mr. Reeves this morning, she began, her expression unreadable. Michael nodded, bracing himself for the worst. He had some interesting suggestions after his visit last night, Lisa continued, and your name came up several times. It did? Michael asked, his voice barely audible. Lisa's serious expression suddenly broke into a smile. Not in the way you're thinking. Actually, he was quite impressed with your honesty when he asked for your opinion about the restaurant. Michael blinked, surprised. He was? Yes. In fact, he's proposed some changes that he'd like to implement right away, and he specifically requested that you be part of the team overseeing these changes. Now Michael was truly confused. I don't understand. What changes? Lisa pulled out a notepad. First, he wants to revise our policy on dietary accommodations. Chef Andre wasn't thrilled, as you can imagine, but Mr. Reeves was quite persuasive. We'll be creating a more flexible approach to menu modifications. Michael nodded slowly, remembering how he had mentioned this exact issue to Keanu. Second, Lisa continued, he wants to modernize our dress code. We'll still be upscale, of course, but with more emphasis on clean, well-maintained attire rather than specific items like jackets and ties. That's great, Michael said, still waiting for the other shoe to drop. And third, and this is where you come in directly, he wants to start a staff education program. Every employee will have the opportunity to taste the dishes they serve, learn about wine pairings, and even shadow the kitchen staff occasionally to better understand our cuisine. Michael couldn't believe what he was hearing. These were all points he had raised during his conversation with Keanu. The actor hadn't just listened, he had actually taken action based on Michael's suggestions. There's more, Lisa said, her smile growing. Mr. Reeves also loved your idea about reducing food waste by partnering with local shelters. He's asked me to put you in charge of developing that program. Me? But I'm the newest server. I don't have any experience with... It was your idea, Lisa interrupted gently. And sometimes fresh perspectives are exactly what we need. Don't worry, you'll have support. But Mr. Reeves was quite specific that he wanted you to lead this initiative. Michael sat back in his chair, trying to process everything. Just 24 hours ago, he had been condescending to a customer because of his casual clothes. Now that same customer, who turned out to be his boss, was putting him in charge of a charitable program and implementing his suggestions for improving the restaurant. I don't know what to say, Michael admitted. You can start by saying you accept, Lisa suggested with a chuckle. Unless you'd prefer to remain solely a server? No, I mean, yes, I accept. Of course I do, it's a lot to take in. Lisa nodded understandingly. Mr. Reeves has that effect on people. Oh, and one more thing. He asked me to give you this. She handed Michael an envelope. Inside was a handwritten note on Lumiere, stationery. Michael, thank you for your candor last night. The best restaurants, like the best people, are always growing and learning. I look forward to seeing where your ideas take Lumiere. Remember, be excellent to each other. Michael carefully folded the note and put it back in the envelope. It was a souvenir he would keep forever. When do I start? He asked Lisa, a new determination in his voice. Right now, if you're ready. The kitchen staff is having their morning meeting in 5 minutes. Mr. Reeves suggested you might want to introduce the new tasting program to them yourself. Michael's eyes widened. The kitchen staff with Chef Andre? Lisa nodded, a hint of sympathy in her expression. Don't worry. Mr. Reeves already spoke with Andre this morning. He knows what's coming. 5 minutes later, Michael found himself standing before the assembled kitchen staff. Line cooks, pastry chefs, dishwashers, food runners, and at the center of it all, the intimidating figure of Chef Andre. The French chef was a legend in culinary circles, known as much for his exacting standards as for his volatile temper. Bonjour, everyone, Michael began, his voice only slightly shaky. Thank you for allowing me to speak with you this morning. As some of you may have heard, the owner of Lumiere visited us last night. There were murmurs and nods around the room. Word traveled fast in restaurants. Mr. Reeves has suggested a few changes to help us better serve our guests, and one of those changes involves all of you. Michael paused, gathering his courage. Starting today, all front-of-house staff will be participating in regular tastings of the menu items they serve. The kitchen erupted in a mix of reactions, surprise, confusion, and a few sounds of protest. Chef Andre's expression remained carefully neutral. I know this might seem unusual, Michael continued, but Mr. Reeves believes, and I agree, that we can't properly describe or recommend dishes we've never tasted ourselves. This will be a learning opportunity for everyone and will ultimately improve the dining experience for our guests. A young line cook raised his hand. So what, the servers are just going to eat the food we make for customers? No, not at all, Michael explained. We'll be scheduling special tastings before service with smaller portions prepared specifically for educational purposes. We want to learn from you about the techniques, the ingredients, the vision behind each dish. He turned to look directly at Chef Andre. We have enormous respect for the artistry that happens in this kitchen. We just want to understand it better so we can convey that passion to our guests. Chef Andre stepped forward, and the room fell silent. The chef looked Michael up and down, as if seeing him for the first time. Then, to everyone's surprise, he nodded slowly. Monsieur Reeves explained this to me this morning, he said, his accent thick. At first I thought it was, how do you say, crazy? But then I remembered my own training in Paris. My mentor, Chef Guillaume, always said, to speak of food, you must first know the food. He looked around at his staff. Perhaps we have been too protective of our creations. The tension in the room visibly eased. One of the pastry chefs even smiled encouragingly at Michael. So, Chef Andre continued, clapping his hands together, we will begin today. After this meeting, we will prepare small tastings of tonight's specials. Michael will join us, and together we will discuss the dishes, the flavors, the textures, the story behind each creation. Michael could hardly believe what he was hearing. Not only was Chef Andre accepting the new program, but he was embracing it with unexpected enthusiasm. Thank you, Chef, Michael said sincerely. I can't tell you how much this means to me, to all of us in the front of house. As the meeting concluded and the kitchen staff returned to their preparations, Chef Andre pulled Michael aside. No, he said quietly. Mr. Reeves told me about your comment regarding his attire. His eyes twinkled with amusement. Very brave or very foolish. I have not decided which. Michael felt his face grow hot with embarrassment. Definitely foolish, he admitted. Chef Andre shook his head. Perhaps not. It takes courage to speak truth even when mistaken. This is something I value in my kitchen. He gestured around at the bustling staff. They fear me, yes, but the best ones also tell me when I am wrong. This is how we improve. With that cryptic statement, the chef returned to his station, barking orders in a mix of French and English. Michael stood there for a moment, taking it all in. 24 hours ago, he had nearly lost his job. Now he was launching a new program, with the support of the most intimidating chef in Los Angeles, all because he had misjudged a man in a simple black t-shirt. 6 months had passed since the night Michael had mistakenly berated Keanu Reeves at Lumiere. The restaurant had transformed in ways both subtle and profound. The dining room looked much the same. Elegant chandeliers still cast their warm glow over white tablecloths, and the piano player still filled the air with gentle melodies. But the spirit of the place had shifted, becoming more welcoming without sacrificing an ounce of its renowned excellence. On this particular evening, Michael moved confidently between tables, describing the night's special. A delicate sea bass, served with fermented black garlic and a citrus emulsion, with the authority of someone who had not only tasted the dish but had watched Chef Andre create it from scratch. The fish is caught sustainably off the California coast, he explained to a pair of diners celebrating their anniversary. Chef uses a Japanese technique called ikejime that preserves the flavor and texture. You'll notice hints of yuzu and a gentle heat from espelette pepper. The couple nodded appreciatively, clearly impressed by his knowledge. This was a far cry from the generic descriptions Michael had memorized when he first started at Lumiere. As he headed back toward the kitchen, he passed the restaurant's newest feature, a small table near the entrance where photographs were displayed. These images showed Lumiere's partnership with the local shelter, now in its 5th month. There was Chef Andre teaching cooking skills to shelter residents, kitchen staff packaging high-quality leftovers in biodegradable containers, and even Keanu himself, sleeves rolled up, serving food alongside Michael and other volunteers. The shelter program had been more successful than anyone could have imagined. Not only did it reduce food waste and help those in need, but it had also become a point of pride among the staff. Even the most jaded line cooks took extra care with the meals prepared for the shelter, knowing they represented Lumiere's commitment to the community. "Order up for table 12, called the expediter as Michael entered the kitchen. The controlled chaos of a high-end restaurant kitchen during dinner service surrounded him. Flames leaping from sauté pans, the rhythmic chop of knives against cutting boards, and Chef Andre at the center of it all, inspecting each plate with laser focus. "Michael," the chef called out, "come taste this sauce before it goes out." Without hesitation, Michael approached the pass, where Chef Andre handed him a small spoon. The staff education program that had begun with such uncertainty had evolved into a natural part of the kitchen's routine. Chefs regularly invited servers to taste components of dishes, explaining techniques and answering questions. "What do you think?" Chef Andre asked, watching Michael's reaction closely. Michael considered the complex flavors. "The truffle comes through beautifully, but I think the acidity is slightly higher than last week." The chef nodded approvingly. "Yes, we adjusted the vinegar ratio. The mushrooms this week needed more brightness to balance their earthiness." This kind of exchange would have been unimaginable 6 months ago, when servers were expected to describe dishes they had never tasted, and Chef Andre rarely explained his creative decisions to anyone outside his immediate kitchen team. As Michael carried perfectly plated dishes to his waiting guests, he noticed a familiar figure sitting at a corner table. Keanu Reeves, dressed simply in dark jeans and a black blazer over a t-shirt, was engaged in quiet conversation with an elderly woman Michael recognized as Dr. Chen, the founder of a local children's hospital. Michael caught Keanu's eye and received a warm nod of recognition. These visits had become more frequent over the past months, though they remained low-key. Keanu never announced himself or expected special treatment. Sometimes he came alone with a book, sometimes with friends or colleagues. Occasionally he would sit at the chef's table in the kitchen, observing the culinary ballet with genuine interest. What remained constant was his humility. Most guests still had no idea he owned the restaurant. He preferred it that way, allowing Lumiere to stand on its own merits rather than relying on celebrity association. Later in the evening, as service began to slow, Lisa motioned Michael over to the manager's station. "Mr. Reeves would like to see you when you have a moment," she said, "and he asked for you to bring Tony as well." Michael found Tony, who had been his mentor during those first difficult weeks, preparing a tableside dessert for a group of delighted diners. After Tony finished his flamboyant presentation, complete with controlled flames and artistic flourishes, Michael relayed the message. "Both of us?" Tony asked, looking intrigued. "Wonder what that's about." When they approached Keanu's table, they found Dr. Chen had departed and the actor was nursing a cup of tea, reviewing something on his tablet. "Tony, Michael." Keanu greeted them warmly, gesturing to the empty chairs. "Please, join me for a moment." They sat down, exchanging curious glances. "First, I wanted to thank you both," Keanu began. "Tony, for your mentorship of newer staff, and Michael, for your work with the shelter program and your valuable input on our recent changes." "It's been my pleasure, sir," Tony replied. "Michael's made it easy. He's a quick learner." Michael felt himself blush slightly at the praise. "And the shelter program has been a team effort. Everyone's contributed." Keanu nodded, taking a sip of his tea before continuing. "I've been thinking about Lumiere's future, and I believe it's time for us to grow, not just as a single restaurant, but as a concept." This was unexpected. Michael and Tony exchanged another glance. "I've purchased a property in San Francisco," Keanu continued. "It's an old firehouse with amazing bones. Exposed brick, high ceilings, lots of natural light. The perfect space for a second Lumiere." "That's wonderful news," Tony said. "Will it have the same menu concept?" "Similar, but adapted to local ingredients and tastes," Keanu explained. "Chef Andre will consult on the menu, but we'll need a strong team on the ground in San Francisco." He looked directly at Tony. "I'd like you to consider becoming the general manager for the new location." Tony's eyes widened. "Me? I'm honored, Mr. Reeves, but I'm not sure I have the experience for—" "You've been at Lumiere for 12 years, Keanu interrupted gently. "You know our philosophy and standards better than almost anyone. Lisa agrees you're ready for this step." Tony sat back, clearly processing the unexpected opportunity. I'll need to think about it. My wife and I would have to relocate. Of course," Keanu said. "Take all the time you need." Then he turned to Michael. And if Tony accepts, I'd like you to consider taking over his position as head waiter here in Los Angeles. Now it was Michael's turn to look shocked. But I've only been here for 7 months. 7 very impressive months, Keanu said. You've shown extraordinary growth, both in your service skills and in your leadership with the shelter program. The staff respects you and you understand what makes Lumiere special. Michael was speechless. When he had arrived for his shift that evening, he'd been a server with barely half a year's experience at an upscale restaurant. Now he was being offered a position that typically required years to achieve. I don't know what to say, he finally managed. Keanu smiled that famous gentle smile. Say you'll think about it, that's all I ask. After they had thanked him and returned to their duties, Michael found himself moving through the dining room in a daze. Head waiter. It was a position he had imagined might be possible someday, years in the future, with plenty of hard work and a bit of luck. Never had he thought such an opportunity would come so soon. As he refilled water glasses at table 23, the very table where he had first encountered Keanu, he overheard a conversation that brought him back to the present moment. I'm sorry, sir, but we can't seat you without a reservation, the host was explaining to a young man near the entrance. We're completely booked this evening. Michael glanced over. The would-be diner was dressed in a hoodie and jeans, clutching a small gift bag. He looked crestfallen. It's my girlfriend's birthday, the young man explained. She's always wanted to eat here. I've been saving up for months. The host remained politely firm. I understand, but without a reservation, we might be able to accommodate them at the bar, Michael found himself saying as he approached. He remembered all too well his own mistake of judging someone by their appearance. The host looked uncertain. The bar's reserved for cocktails, not full dining service. Chef Andre made an exception last week for that food critic, Michael reminded him quietly. I'm sure he wouldn't mind making an exception for someone's special birthday. After a brief discussion, arrangements were made. The young couple would be seated at the bar with a full view of the kitchen, where they could watch the culinary team in action. Michael personally ensured that their experience was perfect, from the complimentary champagne to the surprise birthday dessert that Chef Andre created especially for the occasion. As he watched their faces light up with each course, Michael thought about how much had changed because of one encounter with a humble celebrity in a black t-shirt. Keanu Reeves had not only transformed Lumiere, but he had transformed Michael's understanding of what it meant to truly serve others. The most important lesson wasn't about fine dining or wine pairings or even professional advancement. It was simpler and more profound. Everyone deserves to be treated with dignity and respect, regardless of what they're wearing or who you think they might be. Because sometimes the person in the simple black t-shirt might just be the owner of the restaurant, or something even more important. A decent human being who would change your life with an act of unexpected kindness.